words of wisdom, so anything you maybe haven't had the chance to say that you would hope to say today. Or maybe we could end with one or two stories, if you have sort of any stories of how an individual student's life was impacted by these types of efforts. I think it would be a lovely place to end.
I think for me, I will end with a brief story. As I mentioned earlier, we had quite a few students in a particular major who left us in April to go up and catch crab and fish in Alaska. That number has significantly decreased the last 3 years, in part because we were able to support them and their families. And we're very fortunate that all of them that have participated who would traditionally not continue at our institution, all of them have graduated and or they're on track to graduate. So I think for us, we're able to give back to our community in ways that, because of this grant and because of some of the work that we've done in our community that we haven't considered before.
I will say, and probably because it's on my mind a lot lately, so take this, and consider your own institutional context. Because we started talking about today, a student success culture, the biggest piece for me is don't wait. Do the things that you can do and do them well, and that you can move forward. Some of you are in a situation where maybe you have a more ideal culture dedicated to student success. Some of you are going to be somewhere in the middle where there's pieces and parts that are working or that you think there's good buy-in and energy, and then some of you might be in a more difficult situation. No matter what that context is, I'm a firm believer that there are things, we're all here to make sure students cross that finish line and they're successful. There are things you can do no matter what context. So don't wait. Figure out what, and this has been an example for us. This is one of those things that is reasonably easy to get off the ground. It's easy to get buy-in. It's easy to get a return. Right now, we're not in the ideal, culture pieces. So that So really, don't wait. Don't wait for all those things to be in place if you're at a situation where they're not all there, because you'll never, get some of this stuff off the ground. And there are things that truly are easy to get off the ground that will help you continue to build towards the kind of culture that you want.
I don't think any of us really talked about the importance of financial literacy initiatives in conjunction with our grants or loans or any other programs that we have to help students be successful. But those are a critical piece of trying to help the students understand how to manage their money. There are a number of cost calculators out there that students can use, but there's not a lot of tools to figure out budgets and to help those students understand that just because they can borrow money, they don't have to borrow money, that there are ways of making choices on expenditures that will allow them to graduate with substantially less debt that will make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, I guess I'm very much a data person and make the ROI and data arguments on campus, but I think it's important that we not forget the human side of all of this. I don't know if anybody in this room was at the Complete College America annual convening a few weeks ago in October in Denver, but we were asked to talk a little bit, and we were asked specifically to bring one of our students who's benefited from the retention grants and some of the other programs with us. And we brought this student, Carl McRae, with us. Very charming guy, senior, about to graduate this spring semester. Carl is African-American male from rural part in southern Georgia, a rural town, one stoplight as he describes it. First-generation college student. The flight he made to Denver with us was the second time he was ever on the airplane, and as he pointed out to us, the first time he had ever seen mountains before. And Carl is one of 23 grandchildren, the youngest on his grandmother's side, and this spring will be the first to graduate from college. He'll also be the first African-American male to graduate from college from his high school ever. So, I mean, these are the individuals that populate all those nice numbers that bring the ROI and so forth. And it's great when we can create student success programs that bring revenues to a university, but that's not the reason any of us are in this room or any of us are doing the jobs that we're doing. We're doing it because we can transform lives. And as Stacy was just saying, we face a moral choice here as we begin to see more and more ways in which we can succeed with populations that in the past were regarded to be lost causes. Your first generation, you're low income, of course you're going to graduate at lower rates. Well, that's no longer the case. That's no longer the calculus. And if we have programs like these retention grants that can be transformative to individual lives, don't we have the obligation to pursue them to our best ability?
Well, what a perfect way to end our panel. Let's have a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. You are all excused if you would like to be, and Sherry's going to come up and tell us about the opportunities for seed funding to replicate these programs.
Okay, so I'm going to ask to thank Patricia for her excellent work in facilitating the day. And what the next section is I'm just going to go through what the seed grants are, how they can be used, what the application process is. So at this point, what I do is I'd invite those interested to stay, and those who were just interested in the workshop itself and listening about the program, there's no reason, like if you guys want to go, you're welcome to stay, but to make it sort of more informal and let you choose based on what your interests are. So with that, I'll let people filter out or in. But in your packets, you have, just so you know, you actually had the agenda for the day. You have the executive summary, as I mentioned, of the study that we did on these programs. And if you actually look at the executive summary, it's a really excellent guide just on how to do these things. Because they go over all of the criteria, what to think about, how to do them. So in terms of utility, I think Patricia and her team delivered a really great piece, and then there will be a longer report that goes into more depth on a lot of these things due out in December. For those who decide to apply, we'll actually make a draft of that report available earlier because we do think it's helpful in thinking through some of the issues. Now, what I want to do is I'm just going to go over it quickly and then leave it really open for questions, because I think that's the most useful way of organizing this. That's sort of my sense. So basically what the grants are, it's $50,000. The money can only be used, the only thing, unfortunately, the money can't be used for is to fund students. So there's seed grants, but they're not available to fund your fund. What they can do is anything else in support of that. So if you need to build some of the data infrastructure, if you need to support your financial aid staff, if you want to build up some financial literacy programming to support the students, it can be used in any of those creative ways. You just can't use it to fund the fund. What we're also going to be funding, as you notice, there's a whole range of things out there and available. What these seed funds will be asking you to do, at the very least, and you can go further and wider, is the focus is on the completion grants, so seniors only, defined by you. We're not pre-deciding how you decide what a senior is and how you measure that year, because we know their quarters and semesters, and what you do with summer is up to you, and how you deal with credits, and you've heard the different capabilities. So what that means, I think, is very up to you. So we're looking at completion grants, we're looking at seniors, and again, 4-year, 5-year, 6-year, however you want to do that. And we're looking at, again, gap grants. What we're going to be looking at you to do, and I've put $1,200 here, and I'm willing for you guys to push back and say more, but we are looking at those gap findings to get those folks over the finish line who wouldn't ordinarily get there, but for a very small gap in funding, unmet need, on track for graduation. The unmet need we're going to define as the federal FAFSA form, because I think that is probably the most standard way of doing it. It's probably also the most reliable. But the rest, again, we leave it to your recognizing that, you know, just by having the four up here, you realize the context was different. So that we wanted to keep it as open and flexible for you as possible. So the first year, although it's a one-time $50,000 delivery, we will be asking you to track data on the program for 2 full years. The reason being is we don't really expect, if you remember Tim's numbers, the first year was 41 students. We don't necessarily expect the first year you're gonna be ramping it up, but from the point of view of at least our requirements for the grants is we want to see by the second year that you've covered 40% of seniors on track for graduation with unmet need with a gap financing. And you may actually have to play with that gap financing to get 40%, but my requirement is that it's 40% in the second year. So that's what is built into the grant. So that's what we're funding. We have money, and it's sort of differently organized, but we can fund up to 11 institutions to implement the completion grants on their campuses. The selection process, although the first order of business is you should be a USU member. If we do not have enough USU institutions applying, then it's open up to all APLU. So what I'm recommending to those who aren't USU members is, if you notice, we're asking for a letter of intent or a letter of interest due December 1st. Everybody just tell me. I don't care where you're from, just tell me if you're interested. And what I will do is I will go back to any non-USU member and tell you, is it worth your time to apply? Now, that's one piece of it. And so that I would recommend anyone of any interest, definitely let me know December 1. So that's part 1. What else? So basically, yeah, so the eligibility was the ability to provide student monitoring data at multiple points over the 2-year frame. So know that that's what's required. Demonstrate the capacity to finance the grant to cover 40% by the second year. So like I said, we're giving you, the grants are allocated sort of early next year in January, and then we're giving you that part of the year to ramp up. It doesn't have to be implemented until September, because we know that there may be needs to either recruit money or whatever. So we're giving you a creation time, and then we're giving you 2 years time to meet the required 40%, which doesn't mean you can't do any of it earlier, but I'm just saying from the requirements of the grant, that's what it looks like. Yeah.
So how do you measure that 40% unmet need? Is it across all students?
Across the target group, which are the seniors on track for graduation. So we've defined it, frankly, as narrowly as we possibly can to get that 40% in. So it's seniors, as you've defined them, on track for graduation, again, as you've defined it, because we've seen different ways of doing that, and 40% of unmet need who need a gap financing. And like I said, we've defined it here as 1,200. That I'm willing to work with you on, but we needed to come up with a number. Yeah.
So those seniors who have large amounts of unmet need, we could eliminate that population because the gap funding would not be able to help them.
Exactly. And that's how we were thinking you get to the 40%. Which isn't to say, like I said,